Joining us, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs and MS Now political analyst Rick Stengel, staff writer for The Atlantic and MS Now political analyst Ashley Parker, and Washington Post columnist and senior fellow for national security studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, Max Boot. So, Ashley, do you have a better sense from the White House about what this address is about?
So the president did say in a brief interview today, part of it is he at least said that he plans to express his disapproval and displeasure with NATO, threaten to withdraw from it. But I will say I am a little bit out of the prediction game when it comes to President Trump, because especially on Iran, we have literally heard him say everything. At one news conference, he said, it's true that the war is just beginning and also it is ending. He has talked privately about ground troops and about not wanting to send in ground troops. He has said that he was not looking for regime change, that there has been regime change, even though when most people would agree what we have seen is not regime change. He has expressed a ton of interest and concern about reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And he has also said that's the problem of our European allies. So his team has tried to spin this as 12-dimensional chess. I will say the end result is that he is quite unpredictable, even to allies and adversaries, and that can be inadvertently strategic, but it is not part of a well-laid strategy.
It's not a bad idea to respond to public sentiment. If the public doesn't want you there, it's not a bad thing to say, okay, I'm going to leave. But he did start something. It is a mess right now. So if he were to leave today or tomorrow or in a week without the strait being open, with the regime still having the number of missiles that it has, et cetera, is it better to just leave and leave it like that? Or is it better to stay in and keep pushing?
Well, let's start where you began. Is it a good thing to address the nation? Yes, it is a good thing to address the nation. He should have done it, as you said in your preamble, before, but it's still better now. The problem is that unlike any other president, when they address the nation from the Oval Office, you think these words are written in gold. Everybody has agreed about this. The president has agreed about it. That's not true of Donald Trump. He can give a speech from the Oval Office and then 30 minutes later say something completely different. So it's very hard to know what he's saying, whether it's accurate and whether it reflects a true measure of events. The other issue with Trump that's different from every other president is, in every other administration, Republican and Democratic, the president did not do the negotiating. He wasn't talking to reporters and international people all day long doing the negotiating. Everybody did the negotiating, and the president came in and kind of ratified it. So you never know when he's saying something, is it negotiating or is he talking about his perception of reality? Hard to know.
So, Max, same essential question to you.
Well, I mean, I think it's, very, unpredictable what Trump is going to say or do. I think, as Ashley pointed out very accurately, he's all over the map. And, one day we're fine with leaving the Strait of Hormuz closed. The next day we need to do something about it. I think the bottom line is that if he ends this war with the Strait of Hormuz closed and the Iranians in control, that is going to be a massive U.S. defeat. It's going to be a massive blow to the principle of freedom of navigation and the international order that the U.S. has underpinned since 1945. He's going to try to sell it as a victory. I don't think he can get away with it, which is why he's also threatening the Europeans and trying to get others to come in and clean up his mess. But I think one way or another, he has to get the Strait of Hormuz open. He cannot end this war with Iran in charge of a waterway which carries 20% of the world's oil.
Let's say he does, though. Let's say he does just try to pull out tonight. What happens then, Max?
I mean, if he ends the war right now, it'll be a clear victory for Iran, despite all the damage that they have suffered. And there's no question they've lost a lot of leaders. They've lost a lot of military materiel. But at the end of the day, they're still standing. They're still firing their weapons. In fact, they just had a strike at Israel this morning. They're still attacking their neighbors in the Persian Gulf, and they're still dominating the Strait of Hormuz. And the U.S. has been shown itself incapable of opening that up. I would add the U.S. has also not recovered the nearly 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium that Iran has. And of course, the U.S. has not carried out regime change, even though Trump is now trying to spin the leadership transition in Iran as regime change. That's a leadership change. The regime, the Islamic Republic of Iran, remains unchanged, and it's led by the hardest of hardliners in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So I don't think there's any way he can end the war right now and declare it a victory unless there's some kind of deal with Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz at a minimum.
What would it do to our relationships, both in the region with UAE, Qatar, Israel even, and what would it also do to our relationship with our other allies who rely on the oil that comes out of that strait?
Yes. By the way, the Europeans used to buy most of their oil from Russia, but at our behest, we asked them to start boycotting Russian oil. They now buy most of their oil from us. We're the largest oil producer that goes to Europe. What's interesting and kind of frustrating about Trump attacking our allies for not being courageous enough to help open the strait is, what about our Gulf allies who stand to actually benefit or be hurt from this? They're the true free riders in the sense that they're not involved in helping keep the strait open. UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Oman. They are right there.
So you're saying he should be leaning on them 100%. More to participate?
100%.
Why do you think he's not?
I don't know, because Qatar gave him an airplane. I don't really know why. I mean, I don't know why he's so resolute about attacking our allies, where we have so much in common, and not asking people who depend on us in the Middle East, who we give money to, who we do business with, to help keep the strait open.
I think this is a good thing to linger on, Ashley. Why is the president not harsher on Saudi Arabia, on Qatar, on the UAE, in the same way that he's so hard on France and the UK and all of our NATO allies?
It's a good question. I mean, I will say being harsh on NATO allies for President Trump in many ways is muscle memory. I can recall being on foreign trips with him, showing up at NATO headquarters with true suspense of whether or not he was going to reaffirm Article 5 or declare that he's withdrawing from the treaty. He has long believed, even before he became president, that, as he would put it, America is getting ripped off. America is getting a bad deal. He views everything in transactional terms. I will say some of these countries in the Middle East have proven themselves far more willing to transact with him in sort of more crude brass tacks ways, like, as Rick mentioned, the airplane from Qatar.
Yeah. Max, you too on that?
Yeah, no, it's baffling. And it's not just the fact that he's not calling on the Gulf allies to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He's also not calling on our Asian allies, Japan and South Korea and others, which also rely on Persian Gulf oil. And at the same time, he is giving Vladimir Putin a complete pass on the fact that Russia is reportedly providing drones and intelligence to Iran to help kill Americans. Trump has not had one word to say about what Putin is doing, at the same time that he's excoriating our allies for not being helpful enough. Putin is going beyond being unhelpful. He's actively helping the other side, and Trump will not call him out. So it's all baffling, and it really comes down to Trump's bizarre affection for Putin, which is one of the long-standing.
The enduring questions. But I wonder if it is just as simple as what Ashley and everybody has been laying out, you included. He thinks he can get money from Russia. He can get money from Saudi Arabia. He can get money from Qatar. He can get money from the UAE. He can do business deals with them that'll make him richer that he can't do to the same degree from other Western democracies. Well, is that it? That he just believes that he's going to make money off of them, and that's why he's so nice to Vladimir Putin and is so obsequious and strange? Does he have a man crush? What is it?
I don't know. I hope that's not true, Katie, that it's completely mercenary. I mean, by the way, the EU is our largest trading partner, which he seems to forget.
But you're talking about America. I'm talking about Donald Trump. I'm just trying to make sense of it. It's an enduring question that is hard to understand.
Well, and he has boasted wrongly, of course, about Saudi Arabia spending $30 trillion in America. By the way, our whole economy is only $20 trillion. I mean, so yes, I mean, I think he is beholden to people with whom he has some economic relationship. He treads carefully. But, you know, he's the president of all the people. He shouldn't be doing that.
I mean, he shouldn't be is something we lost long ago. Ashley, is that a way to describe it? I mean, or to answer that question, you've been following him for as long as I have. There are business deals that the family is making, that the Trump organization is making with a lot of these places, or opportunities that they've been seeking with a lot of these places.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I don't think it's as purely mercenary as that. I mean, part of this also is that our allies, Western democracies, as they would put it, have been willing to have tough, frank conversations with this president, right? We're happy to help you here. We're not going to help you there. We don't like the fact that you unilaterally launched a war with Iran without getting our buy-in. And those are some of the tough conversations that some of those other countries are not having. It doesn't mean that those Gulf allies and Gulf states are acting purely in America's interest or even always in Trump's financial interest. But they have in general been less willing to tell him tough truths to his face.